The highway shimmered under the Florida sun, a ribbon of heat stretching toward Miami. In the back seat of my son's sleek black SUV, I sat quietly, hands folded over my purse, listening to their laughter drift forward like a radio tuned to a station I no longer belonged to. Jason, my only son, was at the wheel, one hand resting on the steering, the other wrapped around the manicured fingers of his wife, Vanessa. They spoke in that easy rhythm couples have when the world still bends toward them. Spa on Wednesday, dinner at La Serena Thursday, she said, flipping through her phone. And we'll try that wine bar Jay's coworker mentioned. No one asked what I wanted to do. I told myself it didn't matter. At 72, I had learned that expectations were dangerous things, like fine china, too fragile to hold for long. Still, this trip was supposed to be special. A chance, maybe, to feel like a mother again instead of a quiet afterthought. Vanessa glanced at me, through her sunglasses. "Do you need the air warmer, Renee?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Before I could answer, she turned back to Jason. "Remember to tell the concierge, we want the penthouse suite, not that standard room." I smiled faintly. The standard room, she spoke of, cost more per night than most people's rent. But I said nothing. They didn't know that Seaside Haven Resort, their chosen paradise, was one of mine. One of 17 properties I had built from nothing after my husband died. Back then, Jason was 12 and frightened. I promised him we'd be okay, and I meant it. I scrubbed floors, managed bookings, learned how to negotiate contracts in a man's world. I made every dollar count, and I never told him how hard it was, how many nights I fell asleep at the desk with my hands still smelling of bleach. When the resort finally became a success, I put the deeds in a trust, hidden even from him. Not out of secrecy, but love. I wanted him to love me for who I was, not for what I owned. The SUV turned into the long palm-lined driveway leading to Seaside Haven. As the hotel came into view, its white balconies gleaming against the turquoise sky, my heart swelled with pride. I had chosen every detail: the marble floors that echoed like ocean waves, the coral chandeliers that caught the morning light. "Wow," Vanessa breathed, stepping out as the valet opened her door. "This place is gorgeous." "Yes," I whispered, though she didn't hear me. "It is." Jason handed the valet the keys and slipped his arm around her waist. "Ready, babe?" She smiled, radiant and careless. "Always." No one waited for me. I followed a few steps behind, clutching my handbag, watching them stride through the glass doors of a world I had created. Inside, the lobby glowed with gold and ivory. The staff greeted them with practiced smiles. Behind the desk, I saw Kendra, my front desk manager of 10 years. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second when she saw me, but I gave a small shake of my head. Not now. This trip wasn't about who owned what. It was about something simpler, something rarer. Family. For one foolish heartbeat, I imagined what it would feel like if Jason turned around, smiled, and said, "Come on, Mom. Let's check in together." But he didn't. And as I watched my son's hand resting so easily on his wife's back, I wondered if there was still a place for me in the life I had sacrificed everything to build. The lobby smelled faintly of jasmine and polished wood, a scent I had chosen years ago because it made guests feel like they had stepped into a dream. But that morning, it did nothing to calm me. Jason strode toward the reception desk as if he owned the place. Vanessa followed, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. I walked a few paces behind, content to let them lead. After all, this was their vacation, not mine. "Reservation for Carter," Jason said with the casual confidence of a man used to being obeyed. We requested the penthouse suite. Behind the counter, Kendra greeted him warmly. "Yes, Mr. Carter. We have your reservation right here. You're confirmed for our Seaside Deluxe suite with a private balcony. Unfortunately, the penthouse is already booked for your entire stay." Vanessa's expression froze, then tightened like a storm gathering at sea. "That's impossible," she snapped. "I specifically requested the penthouse when we made the reservation." "Are you new here?" Kendra, ever professional, gave a small, practiced smile. "I understand, ma'am. but it's reserved by another guest. I assure you, the deluxe suite is. I don't care how deluxe it is. Vanessa cut in, her voice rising, drawing the attention of nearby guests. We didn't drive 4 hours to be treated like common tourists. I want the penthouse, and I want it now. I stepped forward, hoping to ease the tension. Vanessa, I began softly, maybe we could. She spun toward me so fast that for a moment, I saw the flash of something feral in her eyes. Don't you dare speak, she hissed. Then, louder, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. Jasmine, or whatever your name is, don't listen to her. She's not important. She's just the help we brought with us. The words struck like open-handed slaps. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The air went still. Then came the whispers, soft, quick, rippling across the room like wind through glass. Guests turned. A few phones lifted discreetly to record. My cheeks burned hot, though I felt cold inside, as if every drop of warmth had drained from my body. Vanessa wasn't finished. She pointed at me as if I were a stain she wanted wiped away. Don't talk to the old lady, she said, her tone dripping with mockery. She's just the cleaner, the nanny, the help. Each word sank deep, heavy as stones. And Jason, my son, laughed. Not the nervous laugh of a man trying to defuse a scene, but an easy, cruel laugh that said he was entertained. Oh, Val, he said, shaking his head. You're terrible. Then, glancing at me, Mom, just let us handle this, okay? Go sit down somewhere. It was such a simple sentence. Yet it hollowed me out completely. This was the boy I had carried on my hip while I cleaned motel rooms, the child I fed with dollar store soup when the power bill came due, the son I stayed awake for night after night, praying he'd have a better life. And now he was laughing at my humiliation, in my hotel, under my chandeliers, on the marble floor I had once scrubbed myself. Kendra's eyes met mine across the counter. She looked pale, torn between duty and outrage. She knew exactly who I was. I gave a tiny nod, permission to do nothing, to keep my secret. I'm so sorry, ma'am, Kendra said gently to me, her voice trembling. Perhaps you'd like to wait in the lounge while we resolve this? Before I could answer, Vanessa rolled her eyes. Yes. Take her somewhere out of sight, she said, waving a dismissive hand. And make sure someone keeps an eye on her. She tends to get confused. Jason chuckled again. It was then, standing in the very heart of what I had built, that I felt something inside me fracture. But beneath that fracture, beneath the shame and disbelief, something else stirred, something old and steady, the quiet dignity I had carried my whole life. I lifted my chin, every muscle trembling, but my spine unbending. Without a word, I picked up my small suitcase and turned toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the brass paneling. My face pale, eyes rimmed with unshed tears, but my posture straight. The way my mother used to stand when life tried to knock her down. For the first time in years, I remembered who I was. And though they didn't know it yet, so would they. The room was beautiful. Soft cream walls, linen curtains, a balcony that opened toward the ocean. Everything crafted with the kind of perfection guests paid thousands for. Yet to me it felt cold, hollow. Like a stranger's house filled with someone else's joy. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands still trembling. The echo of Vanessa's voice lingered in the air. She's just the help. Those words clung to me like the scent of bleach I used to scrub floors with years ago. I had been called worse in my lifetime. Widow, maid, single mother, nobody, but never before by the people I had given my life for. I looked out at the ocean. The waves rolled in softly, steady and endless. I used to love that sound. Tonight, it felt like a lullaby for someone else's peace. On the nightstand sat a framed resort brochure. The photograph on it, smiling guests, palm trees, the words, "Where luxury meets love." I had chosen that slogan. I remembered the day I approved it, back when the resort first opened, back when I still believed hard work and kindness would earn you respect. How naive I had been. My reflection in the window was a stranger. The silver in my hair, the tired eyes, they told a story no one in that lobby would have guessed. They didn't know how I started. How I'd lost my husband when Jason was only 12. How I'd cleaned other people's rooms while he slept in the lobby office, curled up on a couch with my old coat as a blanket. How every penny I earned went to building something that would one day carry his name further than mine ever could. The first motel I bought had 6 rooms. The plumbing barely worked, and the walls smelled of mildew. But it was mine. I scrubbed, painted, managed bookings, cooked breakfast, every inch of it built with the bones of my labor and my prayers. By the time Jason graduated from college, I had turned that 6-room motel into 3 full resorts. He was proud of me back then. Or at least he said he was. Then came Vanessa. Polished. Beautiful. Ambitious in a way that looked harmless at first. She told me once, with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes, "You've done so well for yourself, Renee. But Jay and I were going to live differently. No more small-town modesty." I didn't understand what she meant until much later, until I realized that everything I had worked for was something she saw as beneath her. I stood by the balcony now, the moonlight brushing my hands. Somewhere below, the pool glowed turquoise, laughter floating up like music. I could hear my son's voice, carefree, young again. He was probably at the bar, smiling beside the woman who had humiliated me. And yet even now, even after everything, I couldn't stop worrying about him. I wondered if he was happy. If he still remembered the nights I sat up waiting for him when he missed curfew. If he still thought of me as the woman who carried him through the darkest years of his childhood. But maybe those memories were mine alone now. I closed the balcony door and turned off the lights. The sound of the waves grew softer, more distant. For a moment I thought I might cry. But the tears never came. There was only a strange, still ache, the kind that comes when sorrow has lived inside you for too long. I lay down, staring into the darkness. And before I drifted to sleep, I whispered to the silence, "You can call me the help, but one day you'll remember who I am." The ocean outside answered with its steady rhythm, as if promising that time and truth were on my side. Morning came dressed in gold. The sun stretched across the ocean, painting ripples of light on the walls of my suite. It should have been a beautiful start to the day, the kind that reminds you life is still gentle somewhere. But for me, it was just another performance. A soft knock came at the door. I straightened the sheets, tucked away the night's sorrow, and opened it. Jason stood there, tall, clean-shaven, holding his phone like it was another limb. He didn't look angry or apologetic. Just detached. "Mom," he said casually, "we're heading to breakfast. Val wants you to meet us there. And afterward, could you watch the kids by the pool for a few hours? We have spa appointments." His words landed heavy. Not cruel, not kind, just transactional. As if I were a housekeeper being given the day's schedule. I managed a small nod. "Good morning to you too, sweetheart." He blinked, caught off guard for a second, then smiled thinly.
"Right."
Morning. That was all. No mention of yesterday. No apology. No acknowledgement of the humiliation in the lobby. When I reached the dining room, the smell of coffee and citrus filled the air. Families sat together, laughing over pancakes and plans for the day. The sound used to warm me. Now it only reminded me how far we'd drifted. At the window table, the best in the house, sat my son, his wife, and my 2 grandchildren. Chloe, 10, and Eli, 8. Vanessa was already in full command, dressed in cream linen, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She waved a waiter over with a flick of her fingers. "I said fresh squeezed orange juice," she said sharply. "This tastes like it came from a carton." The young waiter apologized. His face flushed as he hurried away. I recognized him, a trainee just a month into the job. He reminded me of myself when I was starting out, eager to please, afraid to fail. "Morning," I said softly, approaching the table. Vanessa didn't look up.
"Oh."
"You made it." Jason smiled half-heartedly. "Sit down, Mom. We already ordered." There was one empty seat, the one facing away from the view. Of course. I sat quietly. Chloe and Eli were glued to their tablets, their faces bathed in the blue glow of their screens. "How are my little loves this morning?" I asked, my voice gentle. Neither looked up. Vanessa smirked. "They're fine. Kids these days don't really do small talk, you know." I tried to reach out, tucking a strand of hair behind Chloe's ear, but Vanessa's hand darted forward. "Please don't touch her hair," she said curtly. "It was just styled yesterday." I withdrew my hand slowly, feeling the sting more in my heart than in my skin. Jason scrolled through his phone as if none of it existed. After a while, Vanessa spoke again, her tone brisk. "Renee, after breakfast, please take them to the pool. Keep sunscreen on them. Every hour. And don't let them snack too much. If they need anything, call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." She wasn't asking. She was assigning. I stared at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Of course." She nodded, satisfied, and returned to her menu. The rest of the meal passed in silence. Forks scraping plates. Coffee poured. Laughter from other tables. None from ours. When breakfast ended, Jason stood and kissed Vanessa's cheek. "Spa time?" "Finally," she said with a smile that never reached her eyes. They left without looking back. I took the children to the pool. The sun glittered on the water, and the sound of splashing filled the air. But even surrounded by laughter, I felt invisible. Chloe didn't swim. Eli played with his tablet under a towel. Every few minutes, I checked their sunscreen, offered snacks, tried to start a conversation. Nothing stuck. At one point, Chloe finally looked up and asked, "Grandma, Mommy says you used to clean houses for rich people. Is that true?" Her voice was innocent. The question wasn't. My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "I built houses for them. Beautiful ones like this." She blinked, confused, then shrugged and turned back to her screen. For the next 6 hours, I sat in that lounge chair, the smell of chlorine and coconut oil in the air, wondering how a family could sit under the same sun and still live in different worlds. When Jason and Vanessa finally returned, tanned, relaxed, glowing, Vanessa smiled and said, "Thanks, Renee. You can watch them again tomorrow." I nodded, my lips tight. It was then that I finally understood. This trip wasn't about family. It was about power. And in their eyes, I had none left. By the third morning, the resort's beauty had turned into something cruel, like a painting you can't look away from, even when it hurts. The palms swayed in rhythm with the waves, and the sunlight danced on the pool, pretending everything was perfect. But inside me, something had begun to twist. I'd spent 2 days doing what they asked, watching the kids, smiling politely, keeping peace. But peace, I realized, was only quiet when it came from respect. When it came from fear, it was just silence. That morning, Jason and Vanessa were getting ready for another day trip. She was fussing with her hair in the mirror, her reflection as flawless as her indifference. "Remember," she said to me, not looking up, "Eli doesn't like grilled cheese, and Chloe has to eat at noon exactly. I've left granola bars in the bag. And don't forget the sunscreen." I folded my hands calmly. "I remember, dear." Jason, sitting on the edge of the bed scrolling through his phone, added without looking up, "We'll be out most of the day. Traffic might be bad coming back." Their words washed over me like static. I smiled faintly and nodded, the same quiet obedience that had kept the peace for far too long. But that day, I didn't take the children straight to the pool. Instead, I brought them to the kids' club, a bright little building painted in blues and yellows. I had designed it years ago for parents who wanted to relax without guilt. The staff, most of whom had known me since my early days, greeted me with respect that felt like oxygen. Once the children were settled, I took a walk along the gardens. I needed air. I needed space to think. The sky was cloudless, and the air smelled faintly of salt and sunscreen. That's when I heard them. Voices, low, familiar, coming from a shaded cabana by the pool bar. Vanessa's laugh cut through the hum of vacation chatter, like a blade dipped in honey. "Oh, please, Jay," she was saying. "You know your mother won't last forever. And when she's gone, We'll finally have access to everything. A man's voice, my son's, followed, low and casual. Yeah, well, don't hold your breath. She's tougher than she looks. Then another woman laughed softly. That's awful. It's reality, Vanessa replied. She's old. And honestly, she's been a burden for years. We're doing her a favor, keeping her close. At least she can watch the kids and feel useful. My breath caught. I moved closer, hidden behind a palm tree. My hands trembled, but I couldn't stop listening. Jason sighed. You make it sound like I don't already do enough. She barely gets by. You know I cover her bills, right? The utilities, the food. I nearly gasped aloud.
Lies.
Every month I sent money to his account, paid for his mortgage, his kids' private school, the credit cards he maxed out to impress people like her. Vanessa's laugh was soft and cruel. You're a saint, baby. Honestly, I don't know how you do it. I couldn't take care of someone like her, so proud of things that don't matter. She still tells the kids she owns hotels. More laughter. She actually said that? Another woman asked. Oh, yes, Vanessa said, amused. The poor thing's delusional. Probably early dementia. Thinks she's some big businesswoman. My vision blurred. I steadied myself against the palm trunk. The bark bit into my palm, grounding me in the moment. Then came the final cut. Jason's voice, light, dismissive, the same tone he used to scold me for calling too often. She just wants to feel important, he said. It's pathetic, really. But hey, if believing she built something helps her sleep at night, what's the harm? The laughter that followed sliced through the last thread of denial I had left. They weren't just ungrateful. They were cruel. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every missed meal, every prayer whispered in the dark had been turned into a joke. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, the world around me spinning in warm sunlight that suddenly felt cold. As I walked toward the beach, tears burned behind my eyes, but none fell. Not yet. I stood where the waves met the sand, the ocean stretching wide and endless before me. The woman they called the help had built empires. The son who mocked her had inherited a kingdom he didn't deserve. And at that moment, something inside me, the same strength that had built this life, began to rise again. Not out of revenge, but out of truth. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was old, finished, small. They were about to learn what it means when a woman remembers her worth. The ocean has a way of listening. That afternoon, as I stood barefoot on the sand, I let it take everything from me. The humiliation, the betrayal, the ache of being unseen by the very people I had lived for. The waves came and went, as if reminding me that pain, too, must move on. When I finally turned back toward the resort, I felt lighter. Not healed, not yet, but anchored again in something I had forgotten, myself. Inside the kids' club, the children were laughing. Their voices were soft, sweet echoes of innocence, unspoiled by the bitterness of their parents. For a moment, I just watched from the doorway. Chloe was showing Eli how to balance a foam surfboard on the sand, her curls bouncing as she laughed. Grandma, she called when she spotted me. Come play. It had been so long since I'd heard her call me that word with warmth. I smiled, walking toward them. The next few hours became a small pocket of peace. We built sandcastles, hunted for shells, and made up stories about the sea. I taught them how to find shells that sang when you held them to your ear. They giggled, running between the waves. Grandma, Eli asked as he scooped wet sand into a bucket, is it true you used to clean houses for rich people? I froze. The question wasn't his fault. He was only repeating what he'd been told. I knelt beside him, my voice soft. No, sweetheart, I said gently. I built houses for them. Big ones. Hotels, too. Places where families come to make happy memories. Chloe squinted at me. Mom says that's just a story. I smiled. Well, sometimes grown-ups tell stories because they don't understand the truth. But one day, you'll see for yourself. They didn't fully understand, but they smiled and kept building. It was enough.
For now.
When the sun began to dip, painting the sky in gold and lavender, I gathered them close.
Let's go inside, I said.
We'll get ice cream before dinner. Their eyes lit up. Mom doesn't let us have ice cream before dinner, Chloe whispered, almost scandalized. I chuckled. That's what grandmas are for. We walked to the beachfront cafe, the one I designed with coral lamps and hand-woven chairs. The staff greeted me with warmth and quiet recognition. They didn't call me Mrs. Carter, not yet, but I saw the respect in their eyes. We sat together, the three of us, with melting cones and sticky smiles. For the first time since the trip began, I felt like I belonged. That night, back in my suite, I sat on the balcony watching the horizon fade into twilight. I could hear laughter below, Jason and Vanessa at the bar again, celebrating a life built on my silence. But I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. Anger burns hot and fast. What I felt now was colder, steadier. Determination. I poured myself a cup of tea and opened my old leather notebook, the one I used to keep when I first started my business. Inside were sketches, notes, even old staff rosters. I flipped through the pages, each one a reminder of the life I had built brick by brick. It struck me how quiet success can be. You can build an empire, employ hundreds, change lives, and still be dismissed as invisible when you get old. But invisibility, I realized, was a choice. And I had made mine. I picked up the phone and called Kendra at the front desk. She answered immediately, her voice gentle. Mrs. Carter, she said softly, using the name no one else here knew. Are you all right? I'm fine, I said. But I think it's time I reminded some people whose house they're staying in. There was a pause. I could hear the smile in her voice. Understood, ma'am. Just say the word. Tomorrow morning, I said, my tone calm but certain. I'll handle it myself. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the moonlight, the sound of the sea below me. I thought of all the women like me, mothers, grandmothers, widows, who had worked their entire lives only to be treated as burdens once they grew old. And I knew this moment wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming something sacred, respect. I closed my notebook, set it beside my tea, and whispered to the night. They called me the help, but tomorrow they'll call me by my name. The waves answered softly, like applause from the earth itself. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The world outside my window was still, only the sound of waves brushing the shore and the soft hum of early dawn. I made a cup of coffee, black and strong, the way my late husband used to drink it, and stood on the balcony watching light spill slowly across the water. This was the day. No grand plan. No raised voices. Just truth, and the calm certainty that comes when you finally decide to stop shrinking for people who never deserved your silence. I dressed carefully. White linen pants, a soft blue blouse, and the pearl earrings Jason had given me on his wedding day, back when his love had been pure and uncomplicated. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the help. I saw the woman who built this place with her hands. Downstairs, the lobby was buzzing with the start of another perfect day. Families checked in, bellmen moved luggage, and soft piano music played through the speakers. The same marble floors where I had been humiliated now glistened in the morning sun, and this time, they shone for me. I nodded to Kendra, who was standing behind the front desk. She met my gaze with quiet resolve. Everything was ready. A few minutes later, Jason and Vanessa appeared, dressed for another day of leisure. Vanessa wore a flowing dress, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Jason walked beside her, looking relaxed, as if the world belonged to him. There you are, Vanessa said sharply when she saw me. The kids are still asleep. We'll be out for the day again. You can watch them by the pool after breakfast. I smiled, calm and composed. Actually, I said, I think you'll need to make other arrangements. Jason frowned. What do you mean? Before I could answer, Kendra approached, a folder in her hands. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, she said politely, there's been a change in your reservation. You'll need to check out this morning. Vanessa's mouth fell open. Excuse me? That's ridiculous. We're booked for the whole week. Kendra glanced at me, then back at them. You'll find the details in this document. Jason snatched the papers from her hand, his eyes darting over the numbers. This says we're being charged for everything, the suite, the spa, the meals, the bar tabs. That's correct, Kendra said smoothly. All charges will be billed to your credit card on file. Vanessa's voice rose an octave. This is insane. My husband's mother is a guest here. She'll take care of it. Tell her, Renee. I turned to her, meeting her shocked, expectant stare. Oh, I already have, I said softly. That's why you're paying for it now. Her jaw dropped. What are you talking about? Jason looked at me, confusion giving way to frustration. Mom, what's going on? Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, Jason, I said, my tone steady. I'm simply taking back what's mine. Vanessa folded her arms. Yours?
Please.
You don't even have a real job. You live in some tiny apartment. Kendra interrupted, her voice calm but firm. Mrs. Renee Carter, she said clearly, addressing the lobby as if announcing a dignitary, is the founder and sole owner of Coastal Paradise Resorts. This property, along with 16 others across the United States, belongs entirely to her. The entire lobby seemed to pause. The sound of luggage wheels, chatter, and footsteps faded into stunned silence. Jason froze. Vanessa went pale, her lips parting soundlessly. You're lying, she whispered. Kendra smiled gently.
No, ma'am.
I'm not. I stepped forward, holding out another folder, a detailed summary of my investments, deeds, and the financial records that had quietly supported their lives for years. Jason's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages, his face draining of color. I paid your mortgage, Jason. Your children's tuition. Even your car, I said softly. And you stood there while your wife called me a servant. Jason swallowed hard. Mom,
No, I said.
Not Mom. Not right now. Vanessa's voice shook. You can't do this to us. Oh, I can, I said. Because for years, I did everything for you. But those days are over. 2 security officers appeared quietly behind them, not to embarrass, just to ensure peace. You'll check out this morning, I continued. You'll pay your bill, and you'll do it respectfully. You may be my family, but you're not my responsibility. Jason's eyes glistened. Please, Mom, don't do this. We can fix it. You can start, I said, by fixing yourselves. I turned then, not in anger, but in peace. As I walked away, the staff nodded subtly, some smiling through tears. Guests whispered, watching this quiet reckoning unfold. But I didn't need their applause. For the first time in years, I was walking for me, and I didn't look back. That night, for the first time in years, I slept soundly. No restless turning, no echo of cruel laughter, no weight pressing on my chest. Only peace, that soft, still kind of peace that comes when you finally remember your worth. The morning sun crept through the curtains, gentle and golden. I lay there for a while, listening to the waves outside and thinking about how much life could change in a single day. Downstairs, the lobby felt different. Quieter somehow, though nothing had truly changed. The marbles still gleamed, the staff still moved with grace, and guests still carried their morning coffees past the grand staircase. But something inside me had shifted forever. Jason and Vanessa had already checked out. Kendra told me they'd left just before sunrise. No scene, no tears, just silence. Part of me expected to feel triumph, maybe even satisfaction. But as I stood there in the same spot where I'd been humiliated, all I felt was sadness. Because I hadn't wanted revenge. I'd wanted respect. And though I'd claimed it at last, it had cost me my son. I walked outside onto the terrace, where the ocean stretched endlessly under a clear blue sky. The air smelled like salt and sunlight, the scent of freedom. I sat on one of the white wicker chairs and let my hands rest on my lap. For years, I had given and given and given until there was almost nothing left of me but a woman others could use. But now, the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. I sipped my coffee, thinking of my grandchildren.
Chloe and Eli.
They were innocent in all of this. Children repeating stories they'd been told. I wondered what they were thinking now, what Vanessa might have said to explain their sudden departure. I hoped, in time, they'd learn the truth. And when they did, I hoped it would teach them something their parents never understood, that wealth isn't money, it's dignity. That afternoon, I walked along the beach. The tide was low, and the wet sand glimmered like glass. A little girl ran past me, her laughter floating on the breeze, and for a moment, I thought of Chloe. I smiled. A voice called from behind me, "Mrs. Carter." It was Kendra, jogging lightly across the sand. She looked relieved, though her eyes were soft with concern. "I wanted to check on you," she said. "Are you all right?" I nodded. "More than I've been in years." She smiled. "The staff, we all felt what you did yesterday. You reminded everyone here what grace really looks like." Her words warmed me more than she could know. "Thank you, dear." Sometimes standing tall isn't about shouting. It's about being still long enough for the truth to speak for itself. That night, I dined alone at the rooftop restaurant, a quiet table overlooking the sea. The stars shimmered above the water like tiny lanterns. I thought of my husband, of the life we'd built from scratch, and of the promise I'd made to myself the day he died. Never let them see you break. And I hadn't. But strength, I realized, isn't about never breaking. It's about rebuilding, piece by piece, heart by heart, until what's left is truer than before. A week later, when I finally returned home, I found a letter waiting in my mailbox. The handwriting was shaky, familiar. "Jason. Mom, I don't know what to say. I'm ashamed. You didn't deserve how we treated you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see you now. I see everything you did for me, everything I took for granted.
I'm sorry.
Love, Jason." I read it twice, then pressed it to my heart. Forgiveness didn't come instantly, but it came quietly, like dawn through fog. A few days later, a small envelope arrived from Chloe and Eli. Inside were 2 crayon drawings, one of a big hotel by the ocean, and another of me standing beside them in the sand. On top, in crooked letters, Chloe had written, "Grandma's Castle." I laughed through my tears. That was all I needed. From that day forward, I stopped living in the shadows of who I'd been for others. I started doing things for myself again, attending charity galas, mentoring young women in business, and even joining a Sunday book club at the resort cafe. And every Mother's Day, without fail, flowers arrived from Chloe and Eli. Yellow roses, my favorite. Sometimes, people ask me how it feels to grow old alone. I tell them the truth. I'm not alone. I'm surrounded by everything I built, the walls of my hard work, the hands of people who respect me, and the echo of my own courage. Because there comes a time in every woman's life when silence must end and truth must begin. When that day comes, don't whisper your worth, live it. And as the sun sets over the ocean that bears my name, I smile knowing this. They called me the help. But I was never helping them. I was building me. Sometimes, life teaches us the hardest lessons through the people we love most. Grace wasn't just a woman's name. It was the quiet power she carried, the dignity she refused to let anyone take. Maybe her story reminds you of someone in your own life, or maybe it reminds you of yourself. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, remember this: you are not invisible. You are the foundation that others stand on. Thank you for listening to Grace's story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to Whispers of Grace, where every story is a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep your grace.